Happy Wednesday, everybody. I just wanted to throw together this lesson, and we're going to talk today about solving equations. So we've been kind of leading up to this point. So let's just do a quick review. On Monday, we talked about how to collect like terms, so anything that had that same letter, which we called a variable. And if that letter had an exponent, as long as they had the same letter, same exponent, we could add or subtract them together. And then yesterday we talked about multiplying numbers into them, which again, you feel free to go back through those videos if we needed to. And we talked about that idea of the distributive property. So if there was a number outside of the bracket, then we had to multiply it through and make sure that we multiplied everything inside of the bracket by that number. Today, we're actually going to talk about solving equations. So this is kind of where we're actually going to get an answer at the end. So our very last step is going to look like something that has a number. So you will get numbers at the very end. Okay. So to solve an equation, basically what that means is that we are trying to find what number that letter is in order for the equation to be true. So to do this, we have to isolate x. And isolate, just kind of like what we are all doing right now, means to be by itself. So we're going to isolate x here. Get x by itself. Okay, so this means that we are getting x, or the letter, by itself. So to do this, we have to basically undo everything that has been done to x, and we do this by reversing the order of operations. So we're actually going to do the opposite operation. Okay, so we're going to do the opposite of whatever is happening to it. So for example, if I were to see addition, then we're going to need to subtract, because addition and subtracting are opposites. Okay, so if I'm looking here at this equation, this example, it says x minus 15 equals negative 4. Okay, so my first question, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, what operation is happening between the letter, which we call variable, so in this case it's x, and the number. So if I'm looking at this, what's happening between x and minus 15 here? Just going to zoom in a little bit so that I have more space. Okay, so what's happening between my x and my minus 15 here? Well, we said, or my x and my 15, we said that that's negative, so that's subtracting. So what's the opposite? So number 2 then is, what's the opposite operation? And in this case, it's going to be adding. So we're going to add 15 to both sides. And basically what that does is it's going to get rid of this 15 on this side. Because remember, the goal here, our goal is always to get our letter by itself. So goal, squad goals, is to get the variable. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, I'm going to essentially, I can add or subtract things into my equation as long as I do it to both sides. So here I have x minus 15, and we said that we're going to do the opposite of whatever that minus is, so I'm going to add it. And if I added 15 to one side, I have to add it to the other, because it's like a teeter-totter. It has to be balanced, okay? So let's look at this for a second. If I'm subtracting 15 from this side and then I'm adding it, that essentially cancels this out. If I have negative 15 and I add 15, that goes to 0. So that leaves me with just x on this side. Okay, do you guys see that? Negative 15 plus 15 is 0. Now let's look at the right-hand side. I have a negative 4 plus 15. So if I have negative $4 and I put 15 into my bank account, that's still going to give me $9. Okay, so x is going to equal 9. All right? So the main idea here is that whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. All right. So let's go down here and actually talk about some of the other examples here. So we're going to we'll quickly go through some of these. Let's look at example A. So again, I'm just highlighting here that whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. And I always want you to show all of your steps here because guarantee you guys are you're going to stumble, you're going to make some mistakes. That's okay. I encourage the mistake making, but let's see kind of how it's going and where we're getting our answers from. So in my first example, I'm saying x subtract 17 equals negative 21. Okay, so we have x minus 17 equals negative 21. Just like before, our first step is going to be saying what's happening between this x and this 17. So what's happening between my letter and my number beside it? Well, that's subtraction. So I need to do the opposite of whatever's happening in order to get rid of it. So I have x minus 17. The opposite of subtracting is adding. So I'm going to add 17 equals negative 21. Now, we just said whatever I do to the left-hand side, I have to do to the right-hand side. So if I added in 17 here, now I have to add it in to the other side. Okay? So let's look at this. If I have negative 17 on this side, I add another 17, that's going to be 0. So I'm only left with x. And sorry, I'll erase that so we're all in one color. Only left with x. Okay, so on my right-hand side, I have negative 21. I add in 17. That doesn't quite get me to the positive. That's going to be negative 4. Okay? All right, let's look at the next example. So over this way, I have 6x equals negative 18. I'm going to start it off just like I have the other ones. What's happening between my letter and my number? So what's happening between my 6 and my x? So between 6 and x, this is multiplication, right? So if I have multiplication here, what's the opposite of multiplying? Well, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I need to divide both sides by 6 in order to get rid of it because I want x by itself here. So I have 6x, and now I'm going to divide by 6 equals negative 18. If I divided by 6 on one side, I have to divide by 6 on the other side. Okay? 6 divided by 6, those cancel out. That just leaves me with an x. And negative 18 divided by 6, that's going to give me negative 3. All right, so example C. So let's look here. We're going to start it exactly the way that we started the other two. I'm going to look at between my x and my negative 3 here and say what's happening between that. What operation is going on? So the operation that's going on is division. X over negative 3, that's the same thing as saying x divided by negative 3. So I have division. Oops, wrong thing. Division. Okay. What's the opposite of division? Well, the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to rewrite my problem exactly like I see it. I'm going to multiply everything by negative 3. I'm actually going to switch this to a dot because we're going to get confused real quick. Okay. If I multiply by negative 3 on the left-hand side, I need to multiply by negative 3 on the right-hand side. Okay, so divided by negative 3 and timesing by negative 3, that cancels them out. That just leaves us with an x here. Negative 11 times negative 3 is going to give me 33. So x is going to equal 33. Okay, last example. So we're going to start it exactly the same way. What's happening between this letter and my number? So I'm doing division here. Okay. And the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to rewrite my left-hand side, but this time I'm going to multiply by my number, which is 6. whatever I do to the left-hand side, I have to do to the right-hand side. Okay? My 6 and my 6 here, those are going to cancel out. If I divide something by 6 and then multiply by 6, that's going to be the same answer. So that just leaves me with m on this side. And negative 8 times 6, that's going to be negative 48. Okay? All right, I think that we'll stop here for today. This is a good place just for solving simple equations. I'm going to put a worksheet on Google Classroom, and I'll tell you which numbers to do. Just work on solving simple equations like this. We have seen this before, but we need to make sure that we have a really good understanding of how to do this. Okay? I hope you guys have a great day.